workshop to session. Madam Interim Administrator, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Good morning to all. As you know, this work session was prompted out of the August 15th commission meeting in which the commission approved scheduling a work session to be coordinated by the administrator's office to discuss grounds maintenance and to include every department that participates in any type of right-of-way, grounds maintenance, vacant lots, and tree maintenance, along with the warden and a representative from Augusta 311, and hold the work session within the next 30 days regarding the needs in the way of budgeting and schedule implementation for upkeep, maintenance on a rotation schedule versus a reactive schedule. In your booklets that you have in front of you, as well as the information that was sent out yesterday, it is some supporting attachments to include each department that will present today, their department organization charts. The departments that are present will go through only the portion of their organization that relates to the topics that are germane to our work session today. But within your booklet, as stated, you have the entire department organizational chart. You also have a comparison of their budget to actuals. This document is key because it will show you exactly how much each budget was allocated, how much each department was allocated from a budgeting standpoint versus how much they have spent to date, and the date is indicated at the top of the attachment. This is also key to point out because as we have several departments that conduct maintenance efforts throughout our community, it will also highlight the fact that it is extremely difficult, if not almost impossible, for us to accurately track how much money we are spending in one particular line item versus another. Hence the reason why consolidation is key as presented in my right sizing plan. Augusta 311 statistics are also included, which gives you an overview of 2022 data as well as 2023 data. We've also further broken it down to where you could see how many service requests were received in each particular district. We have heat maps that are on display as well as smaller versions included in your packet today. Those heat maps can be sorted by district, so you will be able to dig in to see exactly where your district has problem and challenge areas. The vegetation service request data is also key as it highlights exactly what are those pain points that we will be talking about today, as well as the grounds maintenance schedule for each one of our departments that you've seen before. It is an attachment to the right sizing plan, and it details a very complex scheduling of how we maintain our grounds throughout the county. I call your attention to the proposed Essential Services Grounds Maintenance Division as outlined in the right sizing plan. If you recall, it is suggesting to consolidate not all, but various cases of our grounds maintenance within the Central Services Department by creating a new grounds maintenance division. As we've talked over the past several months, I have now come up with an additional recommendation. This recommendation comes to you with the support of Warden Joseph as it will pertain to us eliminating 5 correctional detail officer positions, which currently have a minimum salary of $40,000 at a grade 16, and then creating 7 grounds maintenance worker positions with a minimum salary of about $30,000 at a grade 5. It is no surprise that the warden has had vacancies throughout RCCI for quite some time. Historically, he's running about 12 to 15. Us eliminating these 5 positions to then create 7 will allow us to put more boots on the ground. Warden Joseph will be coming before you shortly and can speak further to how this idea will work, or I'll be more than happy to elaborate as well. Some of the departments that are present here today is Kelly Walker, our Augusta 311 manager. Mr. Lampkin is out ill, but he is our Central Services Director, and I will be speaking on behalf of Central Services. We have Maurice McDowell, the Parks and Recreation Director, Dr. Hamid Malik, which is our Environmental and Engineering Services Director, and Evan Joseph, which is our warden of RCCI. I don't want you to think that this is all the departments that handle maintenance throughout the city, because we also have present Chief Antonio Burton of the fire department, who also has a grounds crew that manages the fire department, as well as Wes Bond, who also has contracts that handles grounds maintenance for Augusta Utilities.
Good morning. So today's presentation from the Augusta 311 Call Center focuses on data compiled for 2022 and 2023, as Mrs. Dow stated. The 2022 operational overview shows that over 123,000 calls came into the center. Of those total, 86,000 calls came in during regular operating hours, which are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Of that total, 72,777 calls were successfully answered, which yields a response rate of 84%. Now, the data that you have been provided also highlights that the average queue time for 311 in 2022 was 1 minute and 30 seconds. Queue time is how long our citizens wait to speak to a live representative, and then with an average handle time of 3.5 minutes. Now, if we fast forward and look at our 2023 data, you will see that over 96,000 calls came in. Of those calls, 70,000 calls were during our operating hours, and 45,000 calls were successfully answered. Keep in mind that this data is only from January 1 of this year through August the 31st. Now, response rates for this time frame are at 64%. This is definitely an indicator that we received more calls than we were able to handle at our current staffing levels. The average queue time for 2023 was 5 minutes and 10 seconds. The average handle time was 5 minutes and 53 seconds. If you look at the diagram of 2023 calls, you will see that 22,000 calls came in the month of July alone. We can attribute those calls to the network outage, and also the tax assessment notices. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And also the tax assessment notices that went out in July. Now let's ask ourselves, who are these callers? And of course, why have our hold times increased, or our talk times increased? A large portion of them are repeat callers that will no longer accept the response. A request already exists in the system, and we will notify the department and attempt to expedite, right? So we're getting a lot of repeat citizens. Now let's talk about service requests. I would like to note that service requests can be created, please note that service requests can be created by phone, email, or mobile app, and I can provide those numbers if you would like. Diagrams have been provided to show the total number of requests received from various departments compared to the amount of requests that remain open. In 2022, our numbers show that over 50,000 requests for various departments were entered. Tables have been provided in your booklets that gives a breakdown by department. In 2023, Augusta 311 has already created 43,000 requests for services. Now, phone calls and requests for services are not the same thing. So I just wanted to make that notation. And also that data is in your booklet. Please allow me to notate that these numbers do not reflect emails, phone calls for work that needs to be done. So anything that is being done over the phone or by an email, it is not being tracked in the system. As a matter of fact, most of the work that is performed by email or phone, we never see it. If you look at these percentages, it appears that the city as a whole is performing pretty well on an annual basis. I think in 2022, it shows 94% response rate. The truth of the matter is, these numbers give a false perception of response rates to citizen-initiated requests. What we have found in some departments is departments are closing requests before the work is actually completed, while others fail to acknowledge the request and leave it unresolved for months on end. In 2025, CityWorks was implemented. During that time, we held sessions. Several key departments came together. We established what we call service level agreements. Now, there was only one department that was able to respond and gave us the service level agreements, and that is, how long does it take to complete a particular job? And that department was environmental services. So this lack of information resulted in a system that was implemented with no formula to measure success or opportunities for improvement. Now, I have provided heat maps with the help of our IT GIS division, and they were created specifically for this initiative. And it actually shows what relates to overgrowth particularly. Now, in your packet, you have been provided screenshots that show the total number of requests created regarding overgrowth, along with a breakdown by district. Data shows that ditches, right-of-ways, trees and limbs, and also some parks maintenance are the main areas of focus. Data for vacant lots is housed in a different system, so today's numbers do not reflect the total received and outstanding requests that remain unresolved, but I do have those numbers. The next table that has been provided provides a breakdown by district total of requests received regarding overgrowth. So if you look at the screen here, you'll see 2022 and also compared to 2023 data. Please keep in mind that our 2023 data is skewed somewhat because of the network outage. Now, these numbers show that District 1, there we go. These numbers show that District 1 received the highest number of requests regarding overgrowth, and District 2 at a distant second. As I bring my presentation to close, I would like to highlight three main concepts for you today. And my hope is that department heads, as well as the elected officials, would consider this as a recommendation to work to not only improve overgrowth in Augusta, but also the overall response to our citizens. The first thing is consistency. All too often, we fail to work together as a cohesive government. All requests should funnel through one area. My recommendation would be that it goes through 311 so it's properly tracked. The second thing is supervision. Ensure that departments are creating work orders for the work that they perform. This is the only way that we will hold ourselves accountable. And my third thing is follow through. Closing work orders when the work is actually completed. Thank you.
As stated earlier, I'll be speaking on behalf of Central Services in the absence of our interim director. The Central Services
Madam Administrator, there's some
Can we ask questions
Oh,
as
I'm
we
sorry.
go through? That way
Yes.
it kind of flows.
All right. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Frantham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kelly, thank you for this great presentation. Appreciate what y'all do. Couple questions. You mentioned it, and it was my question is, we find ourselves where we close things before they're properly done. What can, from our perspective, can we implement to make sure that all these department heads understand this is the way it needs to be moving forward? Because I continue to hear that. I mean, in my constituents, these things are closed out before they're even done, and it moves on to the next department. But what do you see as what we can do to help with that process?
My recommendation would be that from the powers that be, a decision is made to enforce a requirement that allows the departments to use the system a certain way. Right now, IT kind of allows them to really just create it how they see fit for their operations, so it's no cohesiveness.
Is there a way for, and you might not be able to answer this, is there a way for us to ask IT to enter the department level that it's at, and as it goes through the next department, as opposed to closing it? Like add a line item field to it aspect? Is that possible?
They don't all use the same software.
So the answer to the question is really the request needs to remain open until the work is done. And that's a training. That comes with training. Our employees need to be trained to not close out the request until you've actually completed it. Attach your pictures, the man hours, the equipment you used, and then close it out. That is how CityWorks was designed to work.
Gotcha.
Some departments do it and others don't.
And Commissioner Frantum, to add to that, what creates a bigger problem is that the response to the citizen who entered the request is automated. So if the request is closed prematurely, they receive an email that says, your request has been completed. Should you have any other questions, feel free to call this number. And then that's where the trigger happens, because if it is, let's just say, a pothole in the road, then they're driving saying the pothole is not fixed. I'm still driving over it, which further creates some frustration on behalf of the citizen.
For sure. Okay. Based on the spreadsheet you showed, 22 versus 23, the total number of calls, this 123,000 in the blue box at the top, is that for all year? And then the 96,000 is for current? So basically we're on the same track? Or
So 123,000 is 24/7, 365, even when we're closed, right? So that's how we're able to measure, is it a good idea for us to turn into a 24-hour operation? So we always want to notate how many people are attempting to reach us. Now, that other number, the 86,000, is what comes in between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. when we're open in the phone lines and we're taking calls.
But is the time frame September to September, or is the 2022 the whole year and 2023 just to today? Like,
So the 123,000 is the entire year.
so we're on pace to have about the same amount of calls.
That is correct.
Okay. That I was kind of concerned, and then obviously my other concern is the queue time. 4 more minutes than previous years. Is that because you don't have the staff? Like, what do you think that?
Well, so in the month of May, which we saw the largest number of increase, the tax assessment bills went out. And of course, there was a change to the amount that citizens pay for trash services. It went up. So that caused a lot of questions. And then also, too, we are getting repeat callers. So no longer can we tell them, we have the request in the system. They're asking us to reach out to the department head, to contact the commissioner. So we're having to take a little bit more time to get that citizen's issue resolved.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Commissioner, before we go on, I would like for Dr. Malik to speak to his department practices as it relates to what Augusta 311 considers as premature closing. Sure, that's fine. I just didn't want us to get too far away from the conversation of us closing out service requests in advance, but whatever the pleasure is.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you. And the reason I just wanted to stay with this conversation is we have a tendency to go chase a rabbit. And I understand that engineering has a lot to say in regards to how they handle things. But is one of the reasons why there's no cohesiveness, as you've stated, is it because all of the departments don't use the same software and track things through CityWorks?
That all the departments do not use CityWorks.
Right. And I remember when CityWorks was first introduced, it was supposed to have been this program that was going to help unify and, help all the different departments track the different works that they do, as well as make sure that, as we're going to look at later, some of the heat maps that we are able to create through CityWorks are, accurate, as well as just to be sure to have all that data as well. And I know that there was a lot of data lost during the data breach, from my understanding. I think there's probably...
Which is why we wanted to use the 2022 data to help reference where the true issues are. Yes, sir.
So do your numbers represent the 4 months worth of data that was lost?
They do not.
Okay.
Now, I will say the total number for 2023 coming into the system, it does. But of open requests, they do not.
Interesting. And so when these these calls come in and then you close it out on your end.
We don't close requests.
Well, it says closed, but.
So the department is responsible for closing. It uses our system to send information back to the citizen.
Just follow along with me.
Okay.
When it's transferred to that department and then they close it out or whatever, where is that tracked?
So it depends on what their system of record is. There's about 13 departments that are supposed to use CityWorks. We have other departments that use CityView, LMOs. 311 uses about 6 different systems to report work orders.
Wow.
And that's left up to the department of what system they want to use for their daily functions.
Sounds
But
like-
Commissioner, if the service request is created in CityWorks, then it would also be closed in CityWorks.
Well, and that's part of the confusion, because then those notifications go out stating they've been closed, and you have, constituents calling back. They call you, they call us, saying, hey, this was closed, but this pothole's still there, this ditch still isn't cleaned out. So, once again, we started all over again. And in regards to, I know for a time period, you still had some remote work going on. Is everybody back in the office, or is there still
That
remote?
is correct. I believe we returned last year back to full operations. We're located on Peach Orchard Road, so no one is able to work remotely, excuse me.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the second, Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you. Great presentation, Ms. Walker. My question is, how many emails or calls do you get for commissioners requesting information? I know I send quite a lot, but requesting information on things that should have been reported to 311, but they weren't. So we may, as a collective body, have taken the initiative, well, individually, not collectively, but we may have individually called that department head and say, hey, can you go out and do X, Y, Z? And it's kind of overlooking 311.
So your question is, how many emails do I receive on a daily basis from the commissioners?
Yes, ma'am.
Probably 10 to 15. A busy day, maybe about 20 or so, that, of course, I have to try to expedite.
Okay,
That's
and
on
are
a daily
these emails that you're receiving are work order numbers? Are they being created for this? No. Okay.
Well, no, am I creating them once I receive them? Is that your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
If there is not one that exists in the system, a lot of this has already been reported. It's just getting it done. Mm-hmm. And I will say this. We're going to deploy this heat map. I did want to present it to the commission today. It is available for you guys. You can, it has a lot of great information as it relates to your district. Of course, it is just for overgrowth right now, but we hope to expand this. If it's a pothole, if it's a whatever it is, we want you to see that data. But the important thing is the status needs to be correct. If it's open, if you're still working on it, it really needs to stay open until the work has been completed. And that is what what our plea is.
My follow-up question to that is, how many follow-up emails do you get? Because as I understand, or as I see it, there's not necessarily a time frame that departments have to complete these tasks. Yeah. So how many follow-up requests are you getting 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after? Hey, where are we at with this? What's the timeline?
So the result of that is the lack of service level agreements. If we had a plan in place where if it's a pothole, it takes us 2 weeks to fill. If it's an overgrown ditch, it takes us a month to cut. But there's no accountability there. There's nothing that's built in the system to flag it until I receive the call. Until I look into the system, look at that street and say, oh, wow, it's been a year and we still haven't responded. And then that's where it escalates in hopes that the department head or a selected representative will respond and expedite it.
Okay. And this question is for Administrator Dowse. Thank you very much. But to that point, is there anything in place right now that is saying that certain levels, whether it be code red, I'm just making up levels, but this needs to be responded to within this amount of time? Of course, it's if it's an emergency. So if a tree falls over Washington Road, we're going to go get that immediately. But the potholes or the ditches being cleaned, is there a certain amount of time that they have to respond to those requests?
There is not, and that goes back to the service level agreements that the department would be able to state what is the reasonable time frame for their staff to complete X request.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner Pulliam. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the first, Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for Ms. Walker. Of course, I'm concerned about the numbers by district. 2022, 612 vegetation maintenance requests, and then 219 this year. It's the number, it decreased by 390 three requests. Is that because the requests in 22 are handled, or is that just because the call volume has gone down?
That is due to data loss.
Data loss. Okay. Okay.
So I would definitely use 2022 data to reference the amount of work that citizens are requesting for your particular district.
Okay.
Now, Commissioner Johnson, in addition to Ms. Walker's comments, I will state that some department directors feel that data loss may not be the reason for the discrepancy in numbers or the delta in numbers, but that it may be the fact that the services have been completed in a appropriate fashion. And so I did want to let you know that at this point, we know that there is a large difference between the two, but there's two varying reasons as to why. It could be data loss, or it could be the fact that we are getting better.
We're done. Okay.
However, the concern is that because we continue to receive multiple phone calls and multiple emails that may not be reported in the system is what's leading us to believe that the difference in numbers is indeed data loss.
Gotcha. And Ms. Walker, you gave at the end of your presentation 3 recommendations. What were those again? Can you repeat those for me?
Sure, yes, sir. So the first one was consistency. No, they're not in the book. I apologize.
Consistency.
Supervision and follow through. So the consistency is just creating that one funnel, hoping that 311 will, be that resource, because we do have the ability to track information and provide the data at will, which is very valuable to you as you work with your constituents in the community.
And I'd also imagine that one funnel would also be using one system.
That's correct.
Okay.
Everything that we enter goes into a system called Motorola. It is a cloud-based system, so
Okay.
it was not affected by the network outage,
Got you.
which is why we were able to work
Got you.
while
Thank you,
others
Mr.
were
Mayor.
down. You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Bobby Williams.
Yes, sir. I just have one question. So, can you give me your name again?
Kelly Walker.
Ms. Walker. If a commissioner calls in a problem, do we get any preference, or we just get in line, or what have you? Because when I've called, it's like I take a note and it gets done when it gets done.
So what I would suggest is, and I do have an office number that forwards to my cell phone, so I make myself readily available for the commissioners. I speak with Commissioner Pulliam on a daily basis almost. She's great. But I try to be very responsive. Usually you will hear from me within the hour, definitely the same day, unless I'm out of the office. If I'm out, then there are other people that are in place that can assist you. The thing is, it's not the communicating with me. It's just that when you talk to me, it still sits, if you understand that.
No, I'm just saying, if we call it in, the person, whoever answers the phone, is pretty much, okay, like they're taking a note and it gets done when it gets done. So my question is, do we go to the top of the list? We're just on the list? What are we?
So if you were to call the call center, and I think that this is, it should be this way, because that's truly what customer service is. They don't know who's who by voice. Now, if you introduce who you are, then they'll know. But if you call the call center, it will be entered in the order that it was received. That doesn't state that that's how the department responds, because that is, the department's responsibility. I would recommend if there's something that needs to be handled, that you contact me directly so I can expedite it for you, because I'm not able to control the call volume. We only have 6 full-time CSRs.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a good answer.
You certainly can. Commissioner from the 5th, you good, sir?
Okay.
You ready? All right. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 9th.
Great job, Ms. Walker. Just a question. You said you have 6 full-time
That's correct.
right now. Do you have any vacancy?
We are working on filling our last vacancy. So right now I have 5 full-time, and then there's 1 open position. But that includes a lead CSR and myself. So there's 8 of us total, but 6 positions are dedicated to taking calls.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Director Amit Malik, I think there was some questions for you regarding.
Mayor Johnson, while Dr. Malik is walking up, just to set up his conversation, it relates to the closing of service requests prior to the work actually being completed. His department has a separate process that I want to make sure is explained.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. So Charlie Gay, he's over our maintenance, and he will go into more detail. But yes, so it's a two-step process for us. But before I go that, the pothole, engineering take it very seriously because of the liability issue. So we get on the pothole as soon as we know there's a pothole. We try to get it filled. Maybe same day or next day, but there is some perception in the pothole too. So the pothole may not be pothole, so just wanted to that. So back to the original. So the original initial request come as a request. That means the request came, then we go out and evaluate the request in 24 or 48 hours, and based on that, it's converted to the work order, and I'm going to let Charlie explain it. But we have that conversation with 311 way back when Ms. Dawes was the director, that there should be some notation in the request that this request has been converted to the work order, and the work order been being processed. But I'm going to let Charlie to explain that.
Typically when that service request comes in, some of our folks will go review it, take a look at it, and if it's modified something that we need to address, then that service request will be converted to a work order. Typically, that work order number is included on that service request before the service request is closed, and then we can still track what's done on the work order itself. I don't know if that work order number is relayed to constituents when they make the second request or not.
So what has been discussed and what I believe engineering is aware of is that once that request is closed, the communication to that citizen is cut off. And we, in a perfect world, that work order would remain, or that request would remain open until the work is completed. There is some configuration that we've put into the system that does send notice. A lot of people don't read comments or, messages that are sent back, especially from our mobile app users. But if it's a phone call, the communication is cut off and that request is closed. So even though they may be working on the work order, there's no way to update the customer once the request is closed out.
Thank you. I have a couple of commissioners in the queue. Chair recognizes a commissioner from the first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Commissioner Pulliam hit a very good point, and I want to go back to it for a second. So what I'm hearing is when the calls come to the center, you all do your job. You answer the call, you get the work order in, and then it gets into the hands of the departments.
The request is created.
The request is created, and then the departments have to take it from there, correct?
Right.
So what would prohibit, or I guess I should say, what would be the con, so to speak, of having some type of, gosh, I'm having a hard time putting it together. What would be the advantage and the disadvantage of us putting in place a required time frame for projects to be completed, service requests to be completed? Because I know that we're going to, we have maybe some funding challenges, we may have some staff shortage challenges, but I'm thinking like if we know that the holdup, and I don't mean this in a negative way to the departments, but if the holdup is the departments, getting the job done, so to speak, would it be substantial? Would it be viable for us to put in some type of standard as to how long the department should take to get the job done? I really hope I'm not butchering that question.
Commissioner, it sounds like you're asking the pros and cons of having a service level agreement. One thing I found in working with 311 is that the service level agreements would be utilized as a guide, not as an absolute. And in the event of times such as this, when staffing proves to be problematic across departments, then the department director would need to update their service level agreement to then state that it will take me a little bit longer to complete this particular service request as it has in the past. But having that agreement would one, hold the departments accountable, hold staff accountable in knowing that this task should be completed by X time frame, and then also give the citizens a guideline to know if the expectation is 5 days and then I can follow up, or if the expectation is 2 days and I can follow up. In cases such as potholes, I know they go out and they mark and they have to take pictures and pack and so on and so forth. If the citizen knows that it will take 30 to 45 days, it at least gives the citizen as well as commissioners an expectation versus an open-ended response that they just don't know.
But as of right now, though, there is no 45-day requirement in place.
That's correct. As of right now, many of our departments, as stated by Ms. Walker, a vast majority of our departments do not have service level agreements in place, which make it, which compounds the difficulty when communicating to our citizenry.
Okay, so that should be a priority. Okay,
Right now, we have service level agreements for trash collections, and that's it.
that's it.
That's it.
For
Hence
the
the
entire
reason-
government, only
Entire
trash
government
collections.
is trash collections, yes.
Hence the reason why, Commissioner, if your trash was not picked up on Monday, by the time you get home, when you call in a service request, there is an agreement in place to where the hauler knows that they have to be back on site to pick up that trash. I think, Ms. Walker, the next day, or even by 7 o'clock. I'm not familiar with the
Within 2
specifics.
business days.
So there are agreements in place. We hold the contractors responsible,
Wow. Wow. Okay, so
But not our
that
government.
makes a lot of sense. That makes perfect sense, and I would think that that would be priority up here to make sure that we hold everybody to the same standard. Because I had a call yesterday from someone in the neighborhood saying that the ditch behind their home hadn't been cut in 2 years. I called Dr. Malik. He took care of it, right? But I want us to get to the place where we don't have to call the directors. We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to go we shouldn't have to give ourselves that priority that we know that we have. We shouldn't have to do that on paper. There should be some type of something in place that's just automatic, is on autopilot.
And the question is, was the work that was done, was it tracked? So 6 months from now, will we be able to account for that ditch that they cut? It's great that it got it cut, but
Is it tracked?
how does it help us in the end?
I got you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Sean Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with my colleague. My only thoughts are that that the department heads have some say in that, because if we're going to sit up here and tell them a certain guideline and they can't get it done, I mean, it's not going to make a happy work environment for them either. But so I think that conversation needs to happen between the department heads and the administrator, not us up here trying to tell them what to do. I mean, obviously, we need to, anything's going to be better than we currently have, let's be honest about it. But let's be respectful of those individuals that have been here and not just feel like, it's 2 days and it's got to be cut or something. There's something kind of unrealistic just based on workload. Exactly. My question is around, you said the service request is in City Works, and then you close it out, and then it goes to a work order with them in a new system?
We don't close it out. So it should stay open. The
But
department closes it if they
close
choose
it out, and it goes to their system.
We're in the same system.
Okay. I guess my thing is my issue is that the constituents aren't informed properly, and they feel like they don't know where they're going. That's why they call so many times. Right. And what can we do in this government from an IT standpoint to connect these two aspects of request to work order to better inform the citizens? I mean, we have a world-class IT department. Can we add a field to where we're not closing it out as opposed to it doesn't get to the constituent, it's closed out. It gets to the constituent, it's now at the department level or something.
It needs to remain open until the work is done.
Exactly.
I mean,
But
I don't see a better solution than that. We've created workarounds. We have the notification. Citizens aren't reading the messages that come back that, yes, it has been converted to a work order, even though it is closed. They just see that it's closed.
yeah. Okay. I'm going to let it go.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 2nd, Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. So I would like to know, does our system have the capability, whether it be 311 or City Works, do we have the capability to be able for constituents to be able to call back in and enter their work order number, and it gives them a status update. Does either one of our systems,
Currently, our IVR does not have the ability to do an automated enter your request number, and it just kind of spurts out an update status for you without speaking to a live representative. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yes.
That capability does not exist right now.
Okay. Is that something, I guess I would need IT.
Director Allen?
Good morning.
Good morning, Director Allen. Thank you so much. Is that something that we could look into potentially doing? Being able to get automated updates on work order numbers so constituents could either call back 311 or call 311. In my mind, that makes sense. So call 311, enter their work order number to see where they're at in the process of their request being filled.
So, Commissioner Pulliam, if I could just go back to give a little background on what we are, because I heard a little discussion about it. The work order, a lot of it is what Ms. Walker is currently saying. So I will give you an example. In information technology, we measure workload, we measure efficiency, and we measure effectiveness. You have to have some form of data to have as your baseline. In our help desk, because we have a help desk as well, of course, it's nothing in comparison to what Ms. Walker has to deal with. But we have service level agreements in place for every type of call that comes to us. I look at that dashboard every day. And if those service level agreements are not met, then I have a conversation with the respective manager. That's how normal call systems work. So regardless of what you put in place to notify the customer or the citizen, they're not going to be happy unless they understand that it's been done. And so if we don't notify them that it's been done, if we're sending them things that are saying that the tickets are respectively closed out and they're not closed out, then all you do is infuriate them even more. So it's not necessarily the system or how the system is set up. It's what accountability measures we have in place as a governing body to make these things happen. Though I understand what a lot of departments are saying, it's very hard to set up service level agreements, for specific tickets, but there are certain type of work orders that come in that it's going to take 2 or 3 days. Let's set that service level agreement in the system. We've had several meetings with various departments when this system was implemented to streamline the processes. And it's either the department buys in and does those things and make those things happen, as Ms. Walker has stated, or they decide to do something a little differently. Whatever the case may be, if City Works and or 311 is going to be your record for your system to see how your citizens are being addressed, then the accountability needs to be made on everybody to respect what 311 is doing so that information could be given to you properly.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. So maybe I should have started with in a perfect world, because we definitely, I think everyone up here on this dais agrees that first, we need to get this service level request. That part needs to be situated first. But even after that's in place, so once the department directors get with the administrator and say, hey, it's going to take us 3 days in a perfect world to get this ditch filled. But if there are some, curves in the road and we can't do it or whatever happens, weather, then we will update this automated system. For me, I get a lot of constituent calls that are calling to check back on their order. So if an automated system was in place, or they can either call back to 311, someone needs to update them about where their work order is. So we've got the service level request that's in place. So after that being in place, now where do they call to get a status update versus me having to send the 3rd or 4th email saying, hey, where are we at? What's our timeline? And I have to say, the department directors are very responsive, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for that, because they let me know, hey, we're waiting on this to be filled. We're waiting on that to be filled. But take me out of being the middleman, and now they can go through this automated system, or 311 designate someone to check in on them because it's taken 10 days longer than what it was supposed to take. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It does make total sense. And the system you can't update the system to say the status of where the project is. So instead of just leaving it open till it's closed, you can update and say, we're waiting on such and such. And that customer and citizen can go in the system based on that number that they're given by 311 and check that status. The problem is when they go check the status, there is no status updates. That's the problem that we're having.
Yeah, because it's closed.
Because it's closed, yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Director Allen.
Mayor Johnson, can Kelly Walker speak to the 311 app that would show updates as Commissioner Pulliam was just requesting? If the update is included on the service request, then the citizen could review the app to get that information.
Yes, ma'am. Director Walker.
We have created, or IT has configured a way within CityWorks. If the department goes in and leaves a comment, it will go back to the citizen only on the mobile app, giving them an update. That is under the onus that the request is open. Once that request is closed, the communication is cut off.
Okay. Chair recognizes Commissioner from South and Commissioner Franklin.
Yeah, I just want to kind of wrap this up and save my comments on. I'm hoping that, and I don't know how we're going to do this, Administrator, but I'm hoping that we can have either on the next committee cycle, basically implementing a service agreements between departments and SOPs for departments, because I see a lot of it feels like just the accountability piece is not there. And I'm not blaming one department. I'm just going to say all. And our communication is not where it needs to be. So I'm hoping that we can have this discussion on the next committee cycle, because I think this needs to be implemented pretty quickly. I think we all agree with that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Madam Administrator, for a second time, let's move forward.
Thank you. The next portion of the presentation is concerning the Central Services Department. Central Services was created in 2016, and a portion of the maintenance requirements or responsibilities of Central Services were removed from Parks and Recreation at that time. Currently, Central Services has a grounds maintenance supervisor and 5 groundskeepers. In the earlier slide, I proposed to you that we would eliminate 5 positions from RCCI and then in turn create 7 grounds maintenance workers that would then report to the Central Services Department, as those individuals would be then civilian supervisors responsible for going to RCCI every day to pick up anywhere from 2 to 3 inmates. This will increase our inmate workforce. Currently, the Central Services Department is responsible for facilities maintenance as well as the grounds at those facilities. The municipal building, the Augusta Judicial Center, Charles B. Webster, as well as a host of our other facilities, those buildings are contracted out, as well as our groundskeeping staff manages the day-to-day activities of the Central Services Maintenance Department. Within your attachments behind the Maintenance Scheduling tab, it outlines the ground schedule for the Central Services Department. And next up is our Parks and Recreation Director, Maurice McDowell. Are there any questions for the Central Services Department and how maintenance is currently maintained before we go on?
But can you just add some clarity? You mentioned by adding more staff and reducing the RCCI supervisors. Will we have the ability to go to RCCI and pick up inmate labor? Is that, you mentioned something similar to that?
Yes, sir. So what I'm proposing is to eliminate 5 positions within the RCCI system to then create 7 grounds maintenance worker positions, which will augment our workforce as well as multiply it. Currently, RCCI has had numerous vacancies that they have been unable to fill for the past several years. In conversations with the warden, this is a small portion of his work staff that is already vacant anyway. And so instead of having staff positions that are vacant, that does not allow us to utilize the inmate labor that we can to our best ability, by eliminating those positions and creating 7 positions, we're now able to take out as many as 21 inmates versus 0. Those inmates could be spread throughout the county for various grounds maintenance tasks that are needed. We already have vehicles in place, as well as, because if you recall, the right sizing plan also spoke to our underutilized assets. Those vehicles that sit on side of the road for months and months on end that have low mileage or low utilization, those vehicles can be reallocated in support of this effort.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Ms. Dow. So we are not actually eliminating position. We're just moving position over to central service. And Warren Joseph, but I'm not understanding what we are doing. Because I thought at one point we was having problems with inmate labor in terms supervision, but now we're going to take 4 position, vacant position, and what we're actually doing is moving it over to central service.
So this is a proposed recommendation in which the warden currently has vacant positions that he has had difficulty in filling for various reasons. It could be salary, it could be the environment in which those individuals work on a day-to-day basis. But in speaking with the warden, as well as our finance department and our human resources department, the warden has averaged about 12 to 15 vacancies over the years. And so with him having those vacancies, he does not have the correctional officers on staff to be able to fulfill agreements that he already has in place with various departments, and cannot take the inmates out to complete some of the service requests that Augusta currently has on the books. So in essence, the shortage is not so much of inmate labor, because unfortunately, we have enough inmates. The warden has confirmed that he has the inmates available. He just does not have the supervisory staff present to go out and take them where they need to go to complete the task. And so the warden is here to respond as well.
Warden Joseph, I guess my simplest question is, if we remove these supervisors, will our central services department have the ability to continue to get inmates to go out and complete the work?
Right. So, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, good morning. So what the administrator is referring to, we currently have some details in place right now, similar to what she just described. Engineering maintenance currently have 2 civilians that take inmates out. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, if we could find the right individuals, we will train them, and these individuals cannot have any felonies. That's the first prerequisite. And they'll be given minimum level security inmates. So that's a program we currently have in place right now.
And I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that Central Services has had in the past, I don't know if they have a civilian worker now that acts in that capacity, but currently our engineering department as well as our fire department utilizes civilian labor to go to our CCI in the morning to pick up their inmates and then take them around town as needed. And then, of course, return them in the afternoon.
Can I also add to
Yes, sir.
I think it needs to be stated as well that these individuals, inmates with minimum security, our current population has more medium than minimum. And the medium inmates, they have to be supervised with certified officers. So that would be a challenge. The ratio is somewhere 85 to 15%. So I'm not sure if we will have enough to adequately support that, but yes, that's an option. That's an option.
All right. We want to continue. I got a few folks in the queue. We want to continue with Director McDowell or the colleagues. Warren Joseph. Anybody has a question for the warden before he steps aside?
I do.
All right, Warren. All right. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 5th. I see you in the queue, Sean. Give me a second.
Yes, sir. Warden Joseph, you and I, we've had a number of conversations, and one of the conversations we had was about your staff and being able to recruit staff. And I think one of the things we discussed is finding people that you can use to supervise the inmate crews that wouldn't work all day or what have you. Maybe you can offer some people maybe some part-time work or some 49% people or, some retired folks maybe from the service or what have you that already have some training or what have you. So what happened to that?
In my presentation, Commissioner, that I'm going to be proposing that as well. That hasn't been gone by the wayside.
In addition to what the administrator's talking about?
Yes, sir.
And it'll just be up to us whether or not we want one or the other or what have you.
I think to the administrator's point, that's just another option that she's presenting. I have my presentation. I'm going to present to you what I recommend.
Okay, but there is a possibility that we can do, I'm a school person, so I say 49%. I'm not sure what we call it with the city here, where, if I were to be hired by the school system, I go to work 3 days a week, can work up to, I think, 18, 19 hours or so, and pretty much have the same privileges as I had when I was working. So that is something that you're gonna come at us with. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll wait for him to present that.
All right, thank you. You'll wait. All right, Director McDowell, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, good morning, Mr. Mayor, commissioners. I'll try to be brief. In light of some of the conversations that have been had today, I was under the impression that we were going to be speaking primarily about the right sizing plan as it related to vegetation. I do have some comments as it relates to the process. I think most of you all have kind of hit some of the highlights in terms of the confusion in the processes, not necessarily the system, but how we operate the system internally. I could just speak for Parks and Recreation. Some of our service requests go through 311. Some of our service requests go through City Works. And then sometimes the confusion is if it's a facility-related maintenance issue, it may be Parks and Rec. Sometimes it may be Central Services. And then trying to figure out which one of those are responsible for the closeout will be my only comments as it relates to that. For the exercise here, I've been asked to go over our org chart. My understanding, you all have been provided with our maintenance schedule as well as our budgets as it relates to how we fund the operations in terms of our recreational org chart. I did want to point out, when I took over Parks and Recreation, I guess about 2 years now, we had only 33 maintenance positions. And those maintenance positions not only cut grass, but they were also responsible for facility maintenance, maintaining Riverwalk, maintaining the cemeteries, and then maintaining an additional 40 right-of-ways. Since then, we've added 12 positions. We eliminated some on our program side and then upped our maintenance side to the tune of an additional 12 positions. Coupling that with recent changes in terms of cemetery maintenance, that function has been now put under the auspices of RCCI. And then in addition to that, this body approved back in June for grass cutting for those, so some of those right-of-ways that was under our purview. We still are responsible for trash runs. We're still responsible for flower bedding. We're still responsible for irrigation, all those other ancillary items that are related to that particular maintenance, but the mowing itself has been since moved under engineering to take care of those 40 additional sites. So from a Parks and Recreation standpoint, we don't see the necessary need for us to have our department kind of shifted, because our maintenance folks aren't just grass cutters. When we had to set up for special events, that's the same personnel. When we have to maintain our facility, that's the same personnel. We don't have anyone isolated to just grass cut, mowing constantly all day, every day. They do the trash runs. They do small repair and maintenance to our facilities, but also they do special events. We have Arts in the Hearts this weekend. We have Ironman the following weekend, and then the following weekend we have a 5-day baseball tournament. Even with that baseball tournament, we've been asked by our partners plus the Sports Council to have 10 maintenance people designated all 5 days from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. So that's a quarter of our staff that will be designated to that particular event. So we support all the events that come through the city that you all support and that we support from the city. So our staff I guess the moral story is our staff is just not conducive to doing one item. We do multiple items as it relates to maintenance on our side. So just want us to be clear on that. From a staffing standpoint, I think the things that we put in place in terms of having some of our responsibility under contract, plus us not really having to address the maintenance from the cemeteries, that call volume that we receive from demands for grass cutting was primarily related to cemeteries. Those calls now go to the warden, and so we've seen a dramatic decline in terms of people requesting service requests from us. We may get some as it relates to some playground equipment in certain areas. We may get some calls as relate to maybe a fence or a tree down, but most of our call volume has significantly decreased, and I think the charts itself supports that we're in a better position now than we have historically in terms of being able to take care of those things that we're responsible for. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you all may have as it relates to how we operate from Parks and Recreation standpoint.
Thank you, Director. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
I'll wait.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th, Commissioner Frampton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director McDowell, I want to go back to a couple of things you said. You said that you were at 33 people, and now you have 45 people.
Mm-hmm.
What's the reason for the increase, and then what are those 12 people doing? And you also stated that you basically cross-functional training everyone, in a sense, is what you stated too. So why are we at 45 from 33, I guess?
Because we have 71 sites that we have to maintain. We have 21 facilities. We have 32 right-of-ways that we maintain. And plus, at the time, we had cemeteries as well. So we were understaffed probably by the tune of 20 because in 2015, when this body elected to create central services, 15 of those staff people went to central services, but the workload stayed the same, but the personnel dramatically decreased. Keep in mind, we also had 10 inmate crews that were allocated to Parks and Recreation. Those 10 crews average 5 to 6 inmates, so that's about 50, 60. We currently get 0. We get 0 inmate crews currently, so we lost that inmate labor aspect as well as we lost those additional personnel that went over to central services once we created central services. So we had to bring back up the staff to address the calls that we were receiving, the calls that you all received. We had to have the staff to address those. Now it was a net neutral in terms of cost to the city because we eliminate positions on our program side and shifted them over to our maintenance side.
How many current openings do you have?
Currently, we're going through a reorg process. I think it showed around about 17 openings now, but once we go through our reorg, I think that number will be closer in line, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah. So, and I guess that's where I'm just a little bit confused because you were at 33 when you started.
Mm-hmm.
You're at 45 and you have 17 open. So you're basically going to double your department, but you've taken away cemeteries and then some other things that I was under the impression that you were going to be outsourcing more.
Correct. But when I say 17, that's department-wide. That's not just maintenance. Maintenance, we're probably about 6.
Okay. 6. Okay. But aren't we outsourcing more from your side?
We are outsourcing some, but as I mentioned to you, we outsource the mowing aspect with those 32 right-of-ways, but we're still responsible for all other aspects of those right-of-ways. So it's not like the personnel leaves because of, the mowing aspect is gone. That just help us be able to maintain. Keep in mind the number of facilities that we have and the amount of responsibility we have from a facility standpoint as well as from a ground maintenance standpoint.
For sure. Okay.
And special events.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McDowell, you say you're still maintaining right-of-ways to a certain degree. What are you doing on those right-of-ways?
So we're still responsible for flower beds. We're still responsible for mulching those beds, weed management, irrigation, tree and debris removal, as well as emptying those trash receptacles.
Okay, and where are you with the divesting in parts? I know we came back we had a meeting about a year or so ago. We had a list of parks that we wanted to divest in. Where are we with that process?
I would probably defer to the administrator on that. We haven't had any follow-up conversations on that. I think it's probably time to have that conversation. A couple of those facilities that we had on that list, we've since either received some funding sources to address those sites, so they will come off that list. But also, we work with some additional partners in the community to come back and invest in some of those sites, so they'll come off that list as well. So I think it's time for us to have that conversation again, so we can actually see what we have in our inventory for divestment. But we've done our due diligence to try to either reprogram those sites through partnerships, outside entities that have shown interest to invest in those properties. Plus, we was fortunate enough to get some funds from Governor Kemp to address one of those areas as well that we had on that divestment list.
And so let me go to the Riverwalk real quick. What is your regular maintenance of the Riverwalk? How often do y'all go down and do maintenance, cut the grass, pick up the trash, those types of things? What's your schedule there?
Every day we're at the Riverwalk, we have 5 staff people designated to the Riverwalk, the entire Riverwalk. So that's from 13 all the way down to 5th Street.
Okay. And how much does it typically cost you to maintain a Riverwalk regularly?
Anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000, but again, we cross-pollinate a lot of our staff. So if it's a special event or something going on, we'll go all hands on deck, and we'll get the Riverwalk up to par. And then, normal days we don't have a lot going on there, those staff may be in various other areas.
But generally $200,000, $300,000 a year.
Easily, and that's not even including the capital improvements related to that area. So we have a lot of, I would say, repeat work that we have to do as it relates to the bricks and the foundation there, because during the construction of the Riverwalk, you have about 6 inches of concrete, and then you put those decorative bricks on top with no mortar in between them. So there's a lot of vibration, a lot of movement. So we have people either drive across them with skateboards and that sort of stuff. It cracks those bricks. So we're constantly repairing.
So could that work be outsourced, and then you take those workers that you have on the Riverwalk somewhere else?
Well, portion of it could, but that would increase cost too in terms for the city. So we make do with what we have in terms of resources. Absolutely. I mean, it would be great to have that outsourced, but we also weigh what it would cost the city in terms of what we're able to produce, what we're able to maintain versus outsourcing it. Most of our outsourcing we do is focused primarily on the grass cutting. That seems to be easier, and we can kind of control that cost. But that's because we have multiple contractors doing it. We don't see a benefit of having 1 or 2 contractors doing it, because that creates sort of like a monopoly, and then you lose control of the cost. So for us, having those small business owners that can actually do that type of level of work for us, it works fine, because that helps us control the cost of it, because there's competition there.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the second, Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Director McDowell. I'm looking on the facilities list, and I don't see Dowdy on the facilities list. Is that, who's maintaining that?
We maintain Dowdy.
Okay. So is there a reason why it was left off of the list on page 2? It's not on 2 or 3.
Are you looking at the budget numbers?
No, sir. I'm looking at the recreation and parks, the timeline, or not necessarily the timeline, I guess the delegation of who's in charge for what rec center. So you have listed who's at Carrie Mays, who's at Blythe Park, Henry Brigham, Warren Road.
I have to check that.
You may not. Okay.
But primarily the staff that maintains Carrie J. Mays also maintains Dowdy Park.
Okay.
She will open it when it needs to be, but it's not permanent staff. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So is it, okay. So it's not
So you're looking
consistently
at the organizational
open?
chart.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mhm.
That may have been a simple oversight, and I say that because the staff that operates our Carol J. Mays facility also operates our Dowdy facility. So what it shows on our organization chart, that's pretty much a consolidated service. So it's probably not showing it isolated because there's no additional staff that operate that facility. The same staff that operates Carol J. Mays is the same staff that maintains Dowdy as well.
Okay. And so in this, I know we're talking ground maintenance, but you mentioned in your presentation, you were talking about fencing and things of that nature when things need to be fixed. So this same staff, are they the individuals that fix the fences? Do they tend to them as soon as they see that there's a problem, if a fence has fallen or been broken?
Oh, absolutely. So
Okay.
the same maintenance staff that will respond to it if a grass or something on our property cut, with the same staff if you call and say something's wrong with our fence. If it's something we can do in-house, we do it. If something that we have to outsource, we go that route.
Okay. And so as our conversation earlier was talking about the response time for service requests, is the staff looking for these problems and issues on a daily basis? Or is it something that has to be reported from a citizen or the commissioner for that area?
I don't say have to. We do get a number of service requests, but that's only a snapshot, the numbers that you provided today. We get a lot of calls, a lot of text messages, email, even from the commissioners, but also citizens who have access to me personally, know how to say there's something is wrong. Usually our staff that goes out every day are aware of what's going on in terms of our facilities, and they address them accordingly. But sometimes we do get citizens that call in, and some things that they call in we're already aware of, particularly as it relates to, let's say, a playground or something is down, and that we've added caution tape to. We're probably waiting on a part to come in, and sometimes logistically that takes some time. And then we may get 2 or 3 service requests that's germane to that particular unit, but we're aware that we're waiting on the parts to come in.
Okay. I think this goes, for me, it goes back to what we continued to say earlier, that some type of accountability and checklist needs to be in place so that, because there are fences down that should have been reported and they've been that way for weeks. But from my purview, I see having a checklist in place where whoever is staffed for that facility can go out and check, looked at fencing, even if it's once a week, to prohibit, or not necessarily prohibit, but to make sure that these things are being maintained on a consistent basis.
Right, and I think we're saying the same thing. I know our staff to hit all our facilities on a daily basis, they are looking for those things. We're trained to do so. Sometimes these things do become a resource, and you have to make a decision based on resources. So we always have to be cognitive of the fact of our expectation meeting those resources so we can respond to these. We get a myriad of calls about things that sometimes may not even be the city. A lot of fence that we repair, we get calls from citizens. We have to go through our risk management department to kind of make certain that it's city-owned property. Some people call us a lot of times, and a lot of these things aren't necessarily city, even though it's close in proximity. We've had several trees to fall. The expectation is for us to take care of those things, but we have to go and do our due diligence in making certain that these things that are out there, that they are actually the cities and something that we need to respond to, versus a citizen calling in and say there's a fence down here or there. But we try to put priorities on those things, particularly when we get those calls, and we try to follow up with the citizens ourselves, particularly when we are on a site and next to their home or something. In most cases, that's what it is for us. Someone's calling about something that's near to them or near to their house, and so we'll make contact with them. I think we had this issue over at Dowdy when a particular light fixture that had fallen from our park site onto a property owner's fence. Those conversations were had, and we make certain that we follow up with that particular citizen and make sure they were satisfied once we left that particular site. And there were some other issues that they were having that they brought to our attention that we addressed accordingly as well.
Thank you, Director McDowell.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. Recreation Director.
Around February, we will have Henry Brigham site completed, and we'll be ready to do a walkthrough. So hopefully we're going to continue to try to expedite that project.
Well, I can close down my questions, right? Hey, it's the #1 facility. I walked through there yesterday. Part of the reason we're here is because of the right sizing. You talked about 17 vacancies and then 6, maybe with the maintenance. You talked about, your duties and responsibilities, cutting grass and different things like that. How is right sizing gonna affect your department?
If we move forward with what's being proposed, my honest assessment is you're going to increase the size of your government and you're going to increase costs as it relates to your government, because there are specialized things that our maintenance folks have to do, and they have to stay under Parks and Recreation. For instance, our mobile stage, we have 3 individuals trained to how to operate that particular piece of equipment, and they also have CDLs to move that piece of equipment if we need to move it. Those same 3 individuals also help set up stage, tents, chairs, wherever we call, we go and answer. That same staff also cuts the grass down at Augusta Commons, cuts the grass on Riverwalk, etc. So I'm not sure how you carve out those individuals and put them under another department without us having to either replace them or go back to we putting in service requests. I think this model was tried when we created Central Services to kind of streamline facility maintenance. I think it's been okay, but I don't think it's been the best. And I think we're sort of doubling down on that same model, that if we put all these things under one entity, then your problems go away. Not for us. We do special events. Our maintenance folks are probably 50% of our special event staff, because there's a lot of maintaining restrooms during events, making sure that our stage, our equipment, and all that sort of stuff is operable. And so there's a huge demand on us. We're a Monday through Sunday operation, and sometimes even on holidays we don't really have a lot of days off, and so our maintenance folks are asked to do a lot. And then we don't have the luxury in terms of a number of staff to just have individual germane to only cutting grass. We ask them to do a lot. Keep in mind, my folks only make $23,600. We get a stipend that says we at $15 an hour, but if you all do not find a way to plug that $10 million, we go back to $23,600. So there's been a lot of raises divvied out. There's been a lot of conversations about other maintenance personnel and increases, but our folks' paycheck says it's a stipend. So when we advertise, when we bring them in at $23,600. You get up to $15 an hour because of you getting that stipend. Hopefully that stays in place. But again, creating a livable wage is problematic as well. So when you start talking about personnel, you got to get the staff in. That $23,000 a year, that's less than $1,000 a paycheck. And this is a biweekly system. And some of our folks have garnishment, some of our folks have child support. So you're talking about working and maybe bring home 2 weeks at $400, $500, $600. It causes a lot of turnover in those particular areas. So what we try to do is, incentivize as best we can in terms of workload and expectations. Of course, we would love to have more of our maintenance folk that could make more, but unfortunately, that's just not the reality of it. As I was sharing with the warden, you don't necessarily have to eliminate, from my perspective, you don't necessarily have to eliminate correction officer positions. If we gave our maintenance folks an additional 4,000 or 5,000, put them at 35,000, they could take those same inmates out, because the requirement, according to what the warden is suggesting, is you don't have to be post-certified. You go through their training, you don't have any felonies, so that same maintenance person that I already have on staff, if he's trained or she trained and they don't have any felonies, they could take those 3 or 4 or 5 folks out. So you don't even have to eliminate a position. You don't have to cut anything. Just give our folks an incentive to say, hey, in your normal work, you going out cutting grass, now you're responsible for 2 or 3 other individuals. That's how we can increase our personnel. But again, it would adversely impact us in terms of what we do and how we operate and how we maintain the things that we maintain and those phone calls that we get and that we have to answer, or at least the expectation is for us to answer.
So, I'm trying to gather my thought here. So even if we were to move everything over on one, you're saying that you need at least 3 of them to stay with you.
When you say move everything, if we followed what's being proposed and recommended in terms of right sizing, then ground maintenance is supposed to then be on essential services. So basically what we'll be doing is putting in service requests to essential services as is we do now currently with facility maintenance. We put a service request in through 311 and then we wait for them to respond.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. You'll still need folks to put up tents and all that
Absolutely.
kind of stuff.
I just had to put a service request in versus sending someone out to do it. Say it again?
I'm trying to, I'm not in the queue. I'm in the queue now, but I'm not going to jump the line. I'll say my question.
He
I'm
jumped
sorry.
He jumped the line.
I ain't going to jump the line. I saw the mayor look at me.
He know what he's doing.
All right. Commissioner from the 5th, you good, sir?
Yeah, I'm good.
Madam Administrator, I see you in the queue there.
Yes, sir. I wanted to speak to several things Director McDowell just stated as it conflicts with the factual data that we have on record. He stated that if the $10 million shortfall for ARP is not rectified, then his staff could be at jeopardy of losing their salary supplement. That is inaccurate. The only salary portion of ARP dollars is $2.9 million, in which the finance team and I are already in works in presenting a plan to the commission to ensure that this is not a concern. That also goes in line with the right-sizing plan that I've presented to this body in the past. I wanted to let you all also know that the employees receive a supplement, not a stipend. It has been confirmed with both Human Resources and the Finance Department that this supplement does factor into their retirement. This was originally a concern, as though if employees were making $23,000 as a base and then receiving a difference in cost supplement to get them to $15 an hour, that they would not be credited for that as far as their retirement is concerned. That is not the case. So every employee, and there's several throughout our organization, which total to almost $3 million, that receive supplements. Also, Parks and Recreation, as well as any other department, has the ability today to assign some of their staff as civilian workers, in which they can go today and receive the training that is required by our CCI to go out and augment their workforce and pick up inmates if needed. And so that's not something that is a new plan. It is in addition to what we already do.
Can I respond to that, please? Real quick. It ain't going to take long.
Director McDowell, let's continue with the queue, okay? Let's continue with the colleagues that's in the queue.
I'd like to.
Chair is going to recognize the Commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to hear Director McDowell's response.
Yeah. Real quick. I didn't say that it equated to the entire million. I said a part of it, and I think Administrator Dowse echoed what I said. So about 2 million, 2.9, whatever that number is still a part of that is being received as a supplement. It's not what my employees starting pay is. Now, when we went through the exercise, it said the commissioners approved everyone to make at a baseline $15 an hour, which equates to about $29,000 and like $800 something. But it's not what our folks' salary is. That's base salary $23,600 plus whatever the supplement is, whatever stipend is. It's not their base pay. Just want to make sure that was clear. I never mentioned anything about their retirement, so I didn't even mention retirement. I think Ms. Dow sort of mentioned retirement. I never said anything as it relates to what their retirement is and how that all calculates. But I just wanted to make certain and put on the record, not to be confrontational, but just to say when you're recruiting for maintenance personnel, that's what we're recruiting at the $23,600, and we have to articulate. Yes, you get a supplement, and you get a supplement to that base salary. But at the end of the day, we still got to plug that hole at some point. And if the hole doesn't get plugged, come December of next year, those that are receiving that supplemental pay can potentially go away.
All right, let's continue. Commissioner from the 8th, you good, sir?
No, I still have my questions.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I was just wanting to hear that response because we're being told many different things when it comes, just like when we approved the $15 pay increase back during COVID, we thought that was something that had been done not only in regards to the supplements or whatever, but as the base pay as well. So that's actually pretty interesting information because, you know, we don't see these paycheck stubs that our employees receive. So I appreciate you shining a light on that. All right, so back to my questions. So you said that you still do right-of-way maintenance. Commissioner Johnson asked a couple of things, and you said that you do flower beds and mulching and all that stuff. Are you talking about like on Broad Street or around the entire county?
Around the entire county. So we have.
But well, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So wasn't that part transferred over to engineering last year, or the year before, and then there was an issue where engineering came back and said it's going to cost $700,000, but we only are getting $500,000 transferred out of Parks and Rec, so there was a $200,000 shortfall. Are you still filling in that $200,000 shortfall by doing this work?
My understanding, I think you're correct. My understanding is because the dollars didn't match, we still have responsibilities in terms of those right-of-ways. So I think what you all approved, from my understanding, is for just the mowing of those areas, but the rest of it, we still have to maintain.
That wasn't our understanding. Our understanding was that it was all being transferred out. And so that, once again, thanks for shining a light on that one, because once again, action that we took up here was communicated in a different manner than what the intent was. And once again, I don't even know where to go with that one. That's good, and I appreciate that. And my last question is, where are we on the Riverwalk project that ISM is working on?
Right. So we've completed the Saturday market aspect of that. We've also done our initial assessment of the Riverwalk in totality. There are several things that we partner with engineering, because Dr. Malik is our liaison as it relates to the Corps. We've also worked with our partners over at utilities because it's going to require all hands on deck. We've laid out all the things that need to happen, and we laid out the resources we have. We're in a position to bring forth that back to you all. There's certain things that we can do that we know we're going to be able to do. We're working on our on-call contract. Hopefully, the on-call contract services will allow us to kind of expedite some of these things. We don't have enough money to just broadly bid the entire project out. We know that. So we're going to try to piecemeal it as best we can and work with our partners, utilities as well as engineering, to see what we can do in concert so we can address some of those issues that we know we need to address as it relates to the Riverwalk. Okay, that's good. I'm glad. Be looking forward to that update. And you stated that you have a crew of 5 that's on Riverwalk every day. Every day. How long has that been in place? Probably, I would say probably the last 2-3 years. That's how it's been. So how in the world is Riverwalk in the condition that it's in? Well, I mean, hear me out. No. We've got a crew on Broad Street that another entity is paying for that is out there, and I think there's 4 of them, and you can actually see the work. They're pressure washing. They're doing all kinds of things up and down Broad Street, and so I'm just trying to Riverwalk's grungy. I mean, it's I was out there and it's like, so I'm just curious, how is it in the condition that it's in? Let me just say this, and with all due respect to you, Commissioner, I think a lot of times we are over exaggerating how bad the Riverwalk without putting it in comparison or perspective. There's a lot of issues with Riverwalk. You got to think about it. You got a 5-man crew who is supposed to be doing all the grass cutting, who's supposed to do all the weeding, who's supposed to do all the trash. When things get broken, they're supposed to repair those things as well. You don't have the resources to do that. You got a homeless population that camps out there at night. So we're starting over every day in terms of cleaning that area up. You got major erosion issues at that particular site. Are they not able to address the erosion issues or the limb issues? I mean, it seems easy. It seems easy, but a lot of this requires the Corps. Because frankly, grass doesn't grow in the wintertime. So what are they doing in these wintertime hours? That'd be prime time to do some of these repairs. Absolutely, but it's not as simple as just doing repairs. Again, that's why we partner with engineering, because when you're addressing the erosion issues, you got to get the Corps involved. We would love as well to go down there and spray that area because we could maintain it better with chemicals, but you got the river there. So a lot of that is manual intense. You got these brick stones there, you got tree roots there. You're not dropping a mower in there and just cutting the grass. You're talking about labor intense in terms of weed eaters. They could be in a particular area for half a day just because the labor intensity of it. We've also invested in what we call a robotic mower, but we only got one of those, and that's to cut the slopes. Well, you got one person that's actually doing that all day because of the terrain. So it seems simple when you go down and take a look at it, but it's been a lot of work and a lot of improvements in that area. But it's a constant improvements. It's a constant maintenance thing because you got constantly people there. You got people that come with graffiti. So we're removing graffiti primarily every day as well. And you talk about the same 5 individuals that maintains that entire stretch. So it seems pretty routine and simple, but I think if you spend a day there with our maintenance folks and just observe what they're doing, I think you may get a different appreciation of what they're able to accomplish based on the resource they have.
I'm just able to make that comparison between what's happened on Broad Street compared to what's happened on Riverwalk. And I mean, both of those seem very labor intensive. I understand that Broad Street doesn't have to deal with the Corps, but there's a lot of other issues where I think that we're definitely falling short on Riverwalk.
Yeah, and it's two layers. So we got that same 5 got the bottom level as well as the top level.
I understand. Thank you.
All right, Madam Administrator, I see you in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Commissioner Garrett, I wanted to speak to your comments concerning the $500,000 that was allotted. You're absolutely correct. Last year in November, when I presented the administrator's budget, $500,000 was allocated, not from Parks and Recreation budget, so it was not a transfer, but it was a pilot program which would take away right-of-way maintenance and grounds maintenance from Parks and Recreation to consolidate it with engineering maintenance, as they already had some overlapping areas, for instance, Green Street. That budget was approved and became effective in January. The department put out for bids. One bid that came back, or the bid that reigned supreme that was returned, was $700,000. Of that $700,000, if I recall correctly, $111,000 of that was for the trash disposal. So I then went back to Parks and Recreation and asked them to revise the scope of work, 1, to get it in budget, but 2, so that we're not paying someone $100,000 to empty our garbage disposals downtown specifically. And in doing so, that $500,000 was still allocated, and that was part of the agreement or the contract that this body most recently approved.
So the question is, why is Parks and Rec still doing mulching and flower beds?
Because only $500,000 was allocated.
But you didn't mention that. You mentioned trash was the problem.
Well, I stated that it was $700,000 initially, and of the $700,000, $111,000 was trash. So there's a difference. That difference was part of the scope that Parks and Recreation revised the scope of work. And so it sounds like that includes the mulching and the planting of plants, which was not included in the contract that was recently approved. Hence why Parks and Recreation still has responsibility concerning grounds maintenance.
Is that your understanding, Director?
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yes, sir.
I mean, if there's ever a time to try to get everything out, I mean,
the reality is, as the administrator articulated, we're still in the business of taking care of those right-of-ways in some capacity. It didn't resolve the problem that we thought we were going to resolve in terms of us getting out the right-of-way business. We're still in the right-of-way business with those same level of maintenance individuals.
So once again, the action that the commission took wasn't able to happen, and so the scope was changed, and so we're still having duplicate departments out on right-of-ways, basically touching the same areas at some points. So, yes, blows my mind. All right, that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th.
I'm gonna save my comments for the close. Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm gonna get my comments out now because this is interesting to me because I don't remember us giving the mulch responsibility, the flower plotting responsibility to engineering. As a matter of fact, I think I was the one who made the motion or something along those lines to get Parks and Recreation away from cutting the right-of-ways. Dr. Malik, can you approach, please? I want to make sure that we all have an understanding of what's going on here.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I think we're losing focus.
I agree.
This is supposed to be about the.
It's supposed to be about the right size, and we are getting out. But Dr. Malik, we're going to entertain you for a second.
I'm going to jump back in here real quick.
We're losing.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with that because
let's try to focus on what we came here to do as opposed to.
The workshop.
Hang on
So
a
he-
second, sir. We're, say what now?
Well, if I could, I had the floor.
Listen,
I ain't talking,
listen,
I'm
so-
talking to him.
I had the floor, so nobody has the floor but me
Well,
at this
I've got
moment.
the floor right
No,
now.
you don't take the floor
And
without the
Mr.
mayor
Mayor,
handing it to you.
all
So
right,
you should stand
gentlemen.
down.
We've lost focus.
Gentlemen,
and we need
gentlemen.
to focus on the agenda.
Commissioner,
We're up here
Gentlemen,
admonishing people
gentlemen,
and what have you, and we're
gentlemen.
trying to go over here and beat up the engineering people and what have you. We need to
Gentlemen.
focus on the agenda that we
Commissioner.
came here for, and that's right sizing and or whatever it is that she's got on the agenda. We all,
All right.
So
we all across the river and doing everything
We-
that's what the agenda says.
Commissioner from the 5th, I'm going to recognize the commissioner from the 1st who
Yes,
has
sir.
the, who
Thank
has
you.
the floor.
I'm just
Thank you.
Who has the
saying
floor.
we need to. I'm just saying we need to focus.
Yes, sir. We'll get back.
So-
We're coming back.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Mi- thank
Commissioner
you,
from the
Mr. Mayor.
1st.
The
continue.
original purpose of this meeting was to decide about right-of-way maintenance and our cutting schedules. There was questions about the right sizing plan because folks didn't understand what it meant. And so we added the right sizing conversation to this meeting. I don't say that this is off track because how can we talk about right sizing without talking about departments doing jobs that they're not supposed to be doing or vice versa? It all goes into right sizing. The question that came up was how does right sizing affect the Parks and Recreation Department? And we just heard a lot of different conversations about why Director McDowell doesn't feel as though his department can survive or that his department can't fit into the right sizing plan.
Can you get to the point, sir?
That is, well, I have the floor.
Can you get to
Commissioner
the
from
point?
the
My
5th.
point
Can
is,
you get to the point?
my point is, and I'm gonna make it very clear, that we have to make sure that we are streamlining the efforts so that we don't have to keep making phone calls, so that we don't have to keep pulling directors to the dais, and so directors don't come up and fight the administrator back and forth. We have a job to do. So that's my point, and that's what we've been talking about this entire meeting. So I'm gonna ask my question, and my question is simply this. When we talk about right-of-way maintenance and when we talk about off-site maintenance, who's responsible for what? Because what I don't want to happen is us come back in here in a committee cycle and then say we don't understand and we don't know. Because right sizing is still on the table. We got to move on this. So if I'm asking too many questions, I don't apologize for that. Dr. Malik, can you come to the podium and answer that question for me? When it comes down to right-of-way maintenance, who's responsible for what? That's my point.
All right, Dr. Malik.
Yes, sir. So engineering is responsible in general for upkeep of the right-of-way. There were 40 plus location. The park and rec was taken care of. There were landscape areas in the right-of-way. So as a part of the budget process, I believe it started 2022 discussion. Anyway, as a part of budget process, engineering was basically told that you're going to be getting these 40 plus locations be transferred to engineering and you have to take care of it. So my request was, I don't have an internal workforce. We will take care of it through contract services, and that's what we agreed upon. And my request was, it's probably going to cost $1 million to take care of it. So engineering prepared the RFP, get it out, get the price back, and we negotiated that price. The original price bid came around $900,000. We negotiated down to $700,000. However, in the budget process, it was only $500,000. That's my understanding, the way I read everything.
So let me ask you this.
Giving you my so there was $500 allocated. So since there was $700 was not allocated, or city cannot come up with $700, the scope was reduced, and that's what the split came. So engineering is taking care of what $500 can take care of it, and Park and Rec still.
What right-of-ways do you have that you inherited from Parks and Recreation?
I don't have that list with me right now, but there are, let's say, Henry Street, the whole median in the Henry Street.
That was it, just Henry Street.
Yeah, that's the Park and Rec was taking care of that whole area. So that's come to the engineering. Okay, yeah, so Maurice brought me that's the Central Avenue, Fleming Avenue, the bus stop at the Bransford Road on the Walton Way, that area, to so all those like Walton Way extension area, for example, like between 13 and 11, those median around the Walton Way, engineering is taking it. So there's several like that. So we put in the RFP. So that's what the $700 is coming on that. So we can still make it work if somehow budget adjusted. We can put it back, and the rest of the thing which Park and Rec is doing can be done as a part of the overall contract.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Director Malik. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 8th, who just has a hopefully simple follow-up question. We need to get back on track here.
Yeah, and this question is for, I'm not sure if Parks and Rec wants it or if the administrator wants it, but it was stated that $500,000 was not transferred out of Parks and Rec to engineering. If that's the case, what is that $500,000 being used for in Parks and Rec now instead of being used for maintenance?
Madam Administrator, AG.
The $500,000 was a part of the 2023 budget, so it did not come from Parks and Recreation, nor was it ever.
But what I'm saying
finance,
is the work is being, they're not doing that work anymore, so there should be a savings somewhere.
That's right. It was his staff that was doing the work. So we've gone from staff doing the work to now it being contracted out. And so his staff would have those duties and responsibilities that are no longer required of them. So Director McDowell, you can either confirm or deny that, but his staff should see a major relief.
The only thing we're not doing in those areas is the grass cutting. The grass cut. That's everything else in that particular area. We still have to maintain, as Director Malik articulated. So the original scope had it all, and then once they received the numbers back, the numbers were germane to the 500,000. So they began to scale the scope back to get in line with what was allocated, and then that meant for us to continue to do those services that we were doing outside of grass cutting.
All right. Madam Administrator, let's get back on track. How much more we got here?
We have next the Environmental Services Department,
All right.
as well as engineering, and then after them is RCCI.
All right. So, colleagues, let's try to keep our questions to a minimum so we can get through this, please. Thanks.
Yeah, good morning again. So just to keep myself on track, I put a few hours of my last night to put something together so I can stay focused because from engineering, really all these things, this discussion revolve around engineering because we are out there taking care of right away and all of the things. So I just want to put everything in perspective where we are. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, it's not showing. Okay. Yeah, so the way I look at it really, it's all revolving around effectiveness and performance, what we do. And that's what I want to really focus on. So I'm going to start from how engineering got here. So this slide is the work order. Some sort of showing a trend, pre-merger and post-merger. So in 2011, restructuring, engineering got the public service department as a maintenance. So you can see on average it was 300,000 work order was being completed pre-merger. Post-merger, we are somewhere close to 6,000, but on average it's 5,500. So there is a significant increase in the performance of work delivery. Then give you a little bit more detail. I'm using 2021 data because we didn't have a whole lot of other information. So it's just a breakdown of the same information. The only thing changed is on that the street top left side where it says the right-of-way mowing, 6 weeks actually. engineering went back and negotiated, so we're doing 4 weeks, like per month now, more or less the same cost. Actually, there's some saving on the cost we were using, but it's just the breakdown of the work completed in different categories on that. Then same per districts, where we work. We also, engineering also track the major maintenance activity on monthly basis. So this is the 2022 work slide. So the last column shows the average. I know there are a lot of discussion on the pothole. If you go on the fourth block, the pothole is the very first one. So on average, it's 118 pothole per month. Engineering been repairing on that. And you go on, in the middle there is a ditch cleaning is roughly 0.8 miles per month. We're doing that one on that. The next slide is actually this year data, but I already been mentioned, we have some missing information. But if you go back down in the maintenance part, still we can averaging around the same number, like 112 in 5-month data that's reflected here. And actually, in 5 months, the ditch is 2,000, which is really going to be a little bit more than what we did last year. So again, my focus is really what I said, effectiveness and performance, because that's what really in question is the performance of the engineering. And I just want to really focus on that. So now I'm going to go toward the resources. So this is the worksheet of 2015, work detail, supervisor, work detail, inmate crews is assigned to the engineering. So on average was 10. The next sheet is the 2019. Still on average is a 10. Where we are now, that's the next sheet. Because I want to tie back to the resource and performance again, So this is the summary from 10 to 5 to 4 to 2. That will affect the performance of the department. Okay, also I wanted to focus on as far as the budget-wise. So this is a slide, I took it from the annual 2021. I think 2022 is still work out. And if you look at this slide, the public works allocation is less than $6 million from the entire general fund budget. And engineering is the key part of the public works. So I just wanted to bring, this body attention. All right, I'm gonna take you back to right after the consolidation. This slide is at the bottom right. You can see 2002 slide. This was the structure of public works and engineering that time. I happened to be the part of that time with this department. So it does have a facility maintenance, maintenance itself, engineering, solid waste, trees and landscape. But really the main focus is the bottom part, table. If you look at the very first one, is the maintenance, is 102 workers or employees assigned to the maintenance by that time. If you go down to the fourth one with T&L, that's tree and landscape, there's 57 employees assigned to that department that time. Because those are the key numbers if you want to tie performance, current performance with the past performance. So that was the original. Then in 2005, Commission decided to break the department into two, engineering and public service. So this is a public service structure. And then even at that, if you look at the, on the right side, which is really, so RCCI maintenance is part of that department. My reading is that RCI maintenance, that means the responsibility of resource and funding for these inmate crews fall under the public services responsibility or budget. So this was this is structure, more or less, this body now thinking to create again, more or less, you know. So in 2011, I couldn't find the actual art chart, but it have this layout. So this is what 2011 restructuring did. The point I want to drive it, if you look at all three structures, where the best fit. In 2011, they got rid of the commission got rid of public service, moved some of the functions, maintenance primarily to engineering back, because that's really is the right fit, because it's not only ditch cutting, it takes a lot more other activities to make it work. But also you look at the environmental services, it does have street sweeping, environmental permitting, some other stuff. Around 2018, not all those functions was given back to engineering. And now, this year, you look at the bottom, landscape and right-of maintenance, that's we have just discussion short time ago, right-of-way thing coming back to engineering. So the point I'm driving is, you all can try all that, but really where the best fit is going to come back to engineering, because this is very integrated operation when you come to the maintenance. Just not simply take a lawnmower and cut it. Okay, so this is our current structure. And it does not include environmental services operation, because still I'm working through it. But this is the current structure on that. But I'm going to take you to the actual maintenance division, which is really headed by Charlie Gay here. And then Jay take care of that. So even that, we're working through the optimization. So some of the functions is best fit with maintenance here, like vacant lot cutting. So they're taking care of that through the contract services. Okay, so this is the really key thing where we are, and I think that's where the right sizing says take this right part, the right two column, or where the actual, if you call them grass cutting. That total 13 workers. 4 are in downtown area, and 9 take care of the rest of the county. But their work is supplemented or assisted by the left side 3 column and the middle one. So if you break that up, actually it will negatively impact both operations. And this is the contract services. And this is this is the contract services. So if you look at the bottom, that's what the original plan was, still the plan to make it work. See the bottom part showing 14 inmate crews. Engineering need to have to effectively address all those calls and the requests. And you saw it previously, we down to 2 on that. So, all right. There's another critical element to all this, which engineering takes care of it for the countywide permit, and that's integrated into the maintenance operation. So, like 44,000 structures, ditches, all other things. So that should be also considered, whatever action this body decided to take end of the day. So this is my closing slide. Again, I'm going to say, what we're discussing is effectiveness and performance, and want to make sure, and engineering is more or less on the spot. I think given resources to engineering, we are the most productive department. I'm not afraid to make the statement. I can prove it if needed. And we're doing the best we can do given the resources we have, So if the plan the way it's proposed, that's out in the middle. Again, it's just my assessment, and we agree to disagree. The level of services go down, your operational costs go up, workforce will increase. There is a highly likely the city will be in non-compliance of the permit, and it will negatively impact engineering. Again, in my opinion, I think you all need to look at the workforce skill and technical, basically workforce assessment, and place them according to their ability and skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 6th, Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Malik, in your proposal, I see where you have 12 inmate crews. If you would go back to that, was that 12 or 14? 14 inmate crews. Currently, right now, you say you have 2 inmate crews within your department. Am I correct?
So we are assigned 9, but we're getting 2 because of the
You are assigned
already.
9,
Yes, sir.
but you're
and
getting
then we
2.
Created 2 civilian. So those 2 civilian positions are in engineering. So we're getting those 2, and that's the reason. And actually, in this year budget, I have a request for 3 more.
3 more.
Yeah. So at least just lessening the just waiting for warden to give us a crew, really, for us, and want to have our own. At least 5 crew will get us a lot more further than having 2 crew.
5 crew.
Yeah.
I know Warden Joseph is going to come and speak on his current situation, but I would like to know from him now. I heard Director McDowell talk about in his plan of having civilians to work the crews, and he would be afforded 3 individuals from RCCI per crew. My question is, Warden Joseph, what is the number of inmate workers per crew that engineering has on a normal work day? How many inmates can one, or is there a number that one personnel can watch and manage? Is there a number?
Okay, we start with the last question, Commissioner. So we have 1 correctional officer that takes up to 10 inmates.
That's the maximum he can have. 10.
Yes, sir. 10.
10. So in Dr. Malik's proposal with 14, we know you have the number of inmates. So when you have the right personnel, then you can use minimums, those that are in minimum security, because you have the quote unquote, you have the right personnel, you have the certified personnel. But if you don't, then you have to use minimum, those that are in minimum security, which only 1 civilian can manage 3 people from that standpoint.
Right. Ideally, we would like 3 to 4.
3 to 4.
Right.
3 to 4 ideally. So with I understand administrator's right sizing plan and the scope that she's come up with. Now, looking at what Dr. Malik has here, when it affords him up to 14, that's in a perfect world. That's in a perfect world. That means that we have to have that many certified personnel, which means that it's hard for you to get them right now. You can't get them right now. And it's probably because of the salary that is afforded you in hiring these individuals. So it's probably not a good feel that we would even get what Dr. Malik is suggesting based on the salary that we have now, because you can't feel what you're trying to feel right now. Am I correct?
That's correct, Commissioner.
So, Administrator Dowse, when we look at what Dr. Malik is proposing, and we look at your right side and plan, I'm of this notion here, and I'm just going to put it out there. I'm of this notion here. We talk about hiring. I heard McDowell talk about the number of employees that he has that works in operation and what's not getting done at the Riverwalk and what's not getting done here and there. And we have all of this free labor at our CCI that we could utilize, but all we got to do is make it a little more pleasant for those that are applying for these positions. And I think we can get the work done based on what we have available to get the work done. If we have the inmate labor, we don't have to pay for folks. We don't have to hire additional folks. All we've got to do is make sure that we can pay the folks that will be over these individuals, even if it comes via engineering or if it just stays at RCCI. I think what we need to do is we need to come to grips with what it's going to take for us to get, because listen, I'm telling you, I don't know about my colleagues, but I'm inundated with phone calls about ditches. Mm-hmm. I'm inundated with phone calls about right-of-way. Mm-hmm. I'm inundated. Those are the majority of the calls. And I feel like this, if my constituents feel like I can't make sure that a ditch is clean in their neighborhood and behind their house, then they don't trust me to be able to do bigger things, because these are minute things. These are things that I think that we can get a better grip on, but we've got to have a plan in place that's going to allow us to be able to do it. And whatever that plan is, whatever that formula is, we've got to come together, we've got to get it together, and we've got to make it happen. Because I'm tired of the phone calls. I really am. I'm tired of the phone calls. So whatever it is that we've got to do, whatever it is we got to do, from an engineer, from an administrator, from RCCI, rec and parks, or whatever it is that we got to do, I think we've got to put our heads together and come up with something that's going to get us out of this ditch, this rut, and I don't mean no pun intended, get us out of this mess that we're in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 6th. Commissioner from the 2nd, Commissioner Pulliam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Malik. In your presentation, how does your plan address taking the reactive properties to scheduled maintenance? So there are some properties that I've sent into engineering, some ditches, some avenues, 12th Avenue. I'm just going to name the ones I've sent: 12th Avenue, 10th Avenue, 13th Avenue, Prep Street, and I've been told that they're requested basis, so it's not on a regular maintenance schedule. So in your proposal, how are you proposing to take the lots, the ditches, from reactive to, I guess proactive would be the opposite of that, but to put them on a regular scheduled maintenance?
So, again, it's tied back to the resource. And one thing I didn't mention is, if you go to the chart, there was 102 in the maintenance and 57 landscape. Engineering right now has only 75 members, so the workforce is reduced. But back to your question is, right now we do have a proactive maintenance program based on the resources. And the plan is that more resources need to be added, and like I say, we requested 3 more civilian. Yes, we're gonna get 3 to 4 inmates, but we're gonna have still 3 more crew, which we can make a lot more progress and work done instead of waiting for the actual fully certified, all that. So, there's two things in the plan. One is to optimize the resources, get more out of what we have. Second is to bring the expense down. I say, we went from 8 cycles to 6, and actually it was $100 or $200 less than we were paying for the 6. So you had to observe and optimize and make changes as you go. So it's not a static program, it's a dynamic program, and that's what engineering really is functioning on. We make changes as we see how we do, so there's no, set fit to each and everything. And so to get to all those roads and all that, the resources are not there. I'll be very, honest to you all. And I don't see even we taking that path to allocate resources. There should be a path toward that. Then, you can work toward the plan. I can develop the plan, all day long, but if resource is not there, how are we going to deliver the service? All that. So in the reactive, in my opinion, we do we best. When we get the request, we optimize our resource, move things around, and see where we can cut somewhere here and there, and we get it done. So far, I don't think any request really we say, hey, we can't get it done. If it's a maintenance type request, we try to get it done and fit in the schedule. That will not affect our regular schedule. Basically, it's optimizing what we do. If somebody had to work a little bit longer, that's okay, I mean, there's a lot of things we do. Like some of the folks are, encourage them to come on Saturday, like MS4 thing, which we have to do, collect data and all that, because I don't want to affect the regular operation. And, I'm lucky enough, I have very good staff. They're really very responsive. They take pride in what they do, and they're very responsive. And I ask them something, beyond their normal, they will step up and do it. So we can get there, but it's kind of teamwork and where the resources, would be. So, I mean, we're getting more and more responsibilities, and so far we're delivering it.
Thank you, Dr. Malik. I'd like that same question, to direct that same question to our administrator, because I know you've worked on the right sizing plan. So in the right sizing plan, how would that address, or are there plans to address the parcels and the right-of-ways and the ditches that are now on a reactive schedule to make them more of a regularly scheduled maintenance?
Commissioner Pulliam, my right sizing plan only proposed combining current grounds efforts that primarily speak to tree and right-of-way maintenance, not ditch cutting and not retention ponds, not vacant lots. Dr. Malik had a slide up that showed varying responsibilities of the engineering department. Can you go back to that slide, Dr. Malik? But the reason why I wanted to point that out is because by having it under one department where it is consolidated, it would then allow that department director to better manage the contracts as well as supervise those contractors that are supposed to be doing the job on a day-to-day basis. So it would not relate to vacant lots as well as the remediation of work that would need to be done on those lots. Did I answer your question? Because I'm missing the last part of it as well.
No, you did, to an extent. So a lot of, and my reason for even bringing this to the floor, which then led to Commissioner Mason suggesting a work session, was because there's so many ditches and there's so many vacant lots, there's so many right-of-ways, there's so many roads and streets that are on a reactive schedule. And so how do we get to a place where we don't have all of this reactive, and this is scheduled maintenance for quadrant 1, 2, and 3. And I just, of course, made that up. But in my mind, it's like, how do we get to that resolve? Because as we're talking about right sizing and we're talking about putting everything under one department, that's a lot of what I'm hearing the calls that we have. That's what those calls are, is for that scheduled maintenance. So is this going to even lead way to resolving that issue? So if we put it all under one department and we do the changes that you're suggesting making, is it going to start the road to recovery? That's like the best because like there needs to be that road to recovery, because those are the calls that we're getting. Does that make sense?
It does. And
okay.
So to further elaborate on my previous statements, I want to make it clear that my proposal does not include everything. I hear Dr. Malik, and I also hear Director McDowell when they state that they have tasks and needs within their department that are specialized. It does not preclude those specialty activities. What it does do is the majority of our issues, which is grass cutting, it is something as simple as grass cutting. which we have millions of dollars in contracts outstanding right now between various departments, that the sole responsibility is cutting the grass. In that case, for all of the other efforts, such as the ditches that you're concerned about, the departments provided a schedule to where it should not be reactive. But the bigger problem that I've seen in my research is because of the lack of supervision and oversight, it's being missed. And so they have a every 2-week schedule. Some has a monthly schedule. Some has bi-monthly schedule. But if it misses the 3rd month, then by the time it rolls around to the 6th month, it's almost out of control. That's where a lot of the concerns and problems are coming from, at least the calls that I'm receiving. Not that it's not on the schedule, just that the schedule wasn't maintained.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Frampton.
Y'all hang tight for a second. My first question is for the administrator. Madam Administrator, can we balance the budget without doing any right sizing for next year's budget?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm now there, because what I've seen today, it's not been a good day for Augusta. We've got department heads versus department heads versus administrator, not on the same sheet of music. We got, frankly, I thought that when this was coming before us, there was buy-in from department heads, and then there's clearly not buy-in from department heads on where we're going. I would hope that as a body up here, we need to focus on SOPs and the policy side of things that we talked about and with 311, what we can do, because this has been difficult to hear today. I've been here 8 years, and this has been really difficult. We got political footballs going back and forth between departments, and this is not good. We got a lot of institutional knowledge, and I know that some of you don't like change, but you know, we've got to have we shouldn't be having these conversations up here. I would have thought that we'd have had some of them beforehand before we got up here. But I appreciate the department heads that, you know, stuck up and spoke their mind a little bit today, because I think that's what we needed to hear. But the teamwork is just not here for this government right now. And my focus would be that over the next 3 months, we get this budget passed and we hire an administrator. If there's things within that right sizing plan that we could do that aren't staff changes, that we do some of that. But as far as right now changing things, I just don't think we're there. I think that we need to focus on fixing our house before we try to change the house. And this is disappointing today. And I hope that we can get on a better foot before we have our next work session on whatever the topic is, because department heads, y'all got to speak up before we get here, because this has been tough to hear. I'm wearing a hunger shirt, and I thank Commissioner Johnson for that today, but I feel like I should have worn a referee shirt today. So, thank you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. Question.
Get on track. You need to get on track. Stay on point. I've been waiting for that. I'm sorry.
You know what?
You guys are packing up. You know we got a few more.
A few more what?
A few more presentations.
Commissioner Franham said 2.5 more hours. Oh, wow. Question to the administrator. You said having the departments are grass cutters, correct me if I'm wrong, or what have you, all under one person. And then you said it would be certain things and not ditches and grass. So just explain to me, where are they supposed to come from? Are they still under the same person? Or we got still got 3 or 4 different departments with grass cutters, or just one department under one person, and what?
So, Commissioner, I proposed our primary grounds maintenance duties which is trees and landscaping, as well as grass cutting. Those are our primary grounds maintenance duties throughout our government. Consolidating those units under a central services grounds maintenance division. This is the bulk of our issues and problems and concerns, as well as what shows negatively from a aesthetic standpoint on our community. The remaining services that are specialty by nature would still be the responsibility of those respective units, where engineering has a need for specialized care for retention ponds, or even erosion control surrounding ditch maintenance, or even as it concerns where various things are erected. The same as with parks and recreation. I am aware that a baseball field requires certain care and maintenance, such as a football field. However, some of them are large plots of land that just need the grass cut. By consolidating those efforts, it will allow the engineering department and the Parks and Recreation department to focus on their core mission instead of trying to manage grass cutting contractors. That was the overall impotence behind it. And as Dr. Malik, another one of his slides, pointed out, the definition and the meaning behind right sizing, which was to do just that. And I stated early on in my presentations that my plan that I proposed, I knew was not favored. I have spoken at length with all of the departments that are affected, and yes, it is change. But at the same time, we're still getting the phone calls. Augusta still looks the same in most cases, and this was an effort to ensure that our community is shown in a positive light, in addition to saving Augusta money, as well as projecting that upon our taxpayers.
Okay, with you saying that last part, saving Augusta money, how are we going to save money?
Many of our contracts overlap. And so not every service has to be contracted out. By having someone assess all of our contracts to determine how assets and resources are best deployed could ensure a savings. Right now, our contracts are spread throughout our community, and because they overlap, I am certain that we can reap the benefits of economies of scale, supply and demand. And then there are probably things I'm most certain of that are contracted out that staff can do. If we have the current staff today, I can't speak to that because, as stated, as the right sizing plan has not been approved, I have not done a detailed dive into what the implementation plan would look like. But from a high level overview, I am certain that dollars can be recouped by staffers being able to assume some of those duties and responsibilities.
Gotcha. This is a question to Dr. Malik. I know you put a lot of thought into the right sizing plan, how it will affect your department, the monies that you will or will not use or what have you. So I guess I'd just ask you, how will this plan affect your department? Will you have more people, less people, or will you be doing certain things or not doing certain things, or what is it? How is it going to affect your department?
It will affect in a several way, but let me start because, like, taking away all the contracts, all the money will go with it. But the way operation function right now is optimizing, is integrated operation. So we work together and we have ability to use the resources among different functions to get it done. But if that's not there, engineering will be left only with what's the operational budget we have to the general fund. But still, I was under the impression even the ponds and everything, but if we had to take care of the ponds and the ditch and the erosion, you can't separate all those things. Well, let's speak of the ditch. It's just not cutting the grass. You have to make sure there's no blockage in the ditch. You have to make sure that ditch is draining positively out. It takes more than one function to make it work, and that's what I showed you all. This thing been moved around previously too. It end up back to the engineering because it takes integrated approach or coordination to get this done. And also, right now, city has a lot, responsibility to stay in compliance with the permit, and that all activities are part of everything we just talking. So, and right now, everything is digital. So the state will not take. I'm gonna give you one quick before public services, engineering called public services. Hey, what's your, how many miles of ditch you cut, or how many? You say just add 10% to it. It worked, but now it's everything digital. Actually, state want us to give them the data and everything, and Oscar can speak to that. But it's things are different, so we have all that tracks. Who's gonna do that? So it's not. I mean, it sounds simple that it's just grass cutting, but it's really not.
All righty, sir. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner from District 1, you had the floor, sir, and let me remind you, we're moving on here, so we need to wrap up. So,
Why everybody try to speed me up when I start talking? Y'all try to speed me up when I start talking.
well, we still have a.
Try to speed me up when I'm talking. Lord have mercy. Y'all look good in your orange, and y'all trying to speed me up when I start talking. I ain't gonna stand for it. No, I got you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a comment because I think that our will to continue with this conversation is slowly dwindled away. Just at least for today, that's the point I wanted to make, Mayor Pro Tem. You're absolutely right. I think that my biggest disappointment today has just been how some of this information that y'all presented to us today didn't get to the administrator's eyes until right now. And that's very disturbing in a lot of ways. What I expect is for this government to get to a better place as far as the service delivery. And however y'all have to figure that out. We need to come back to this conversation. We need to come back to this workshop, 30 days, 45 days, I don't know, whatever time it takes for you all to come back to the table with a solid plan that this commission can get behind and pass. Because again, at the end of the day, we're still getting these phone calls, and we're going to continue to get them, but we want to be confident in knowing that there's a solid plan in place. I think maybe 3 or 4 of us have said that this morning, that this is what we expect, and what we don't expect is to have the ping pong back and forth between directors and your boss, right? You're a leader, the leader of this government. So let's figure this out within the next 30 to 45 days or so. While we can balance the budget without right sizing, how long are we going to continue to kick the can down the road where right sizing and these issues are concerning? Some folks don't want to lose their money. Some folks don't want to lose their staff. But at the end of the day, we're having to figure out the best routes to take where service delivery for our government is concerned. So maybe within the next 30 to 45 days, we need to come back and have this conversation again where something is presented that everyone who has had a comment, who has had an opinion, has had weigh in on, and we have a solid plan that this commission can get behind. Because I'm just not interested in continuing to play the back and forth game about this. We have to get this thing done. So that's what I submit for the record, Mr. Mayor, and I yield the floor, but thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Administrator, how many more presenters we have?
We just have our CCI remaining.
All right, is that the warden?
That's the warden.
Warden Joseph.
And while he makes his way up, I would like to state that in February, as you know, I was tasked with presenting a right-sizing plan. I met with every department director, those that are present here today as well as those that are not. And in my best-ditch efforts, by presenting you a plan with minimal confusion as well as conflicts amongst peers, it's going to be extremely challenging to present to you a plan in which everyone buys in 100%. So please keep that in mind, because when you start moving positions which affect funding, which affect authorities, there's going to be some discontentment as it surrounds whatever plan is proposed. So please keep that in mind, because everyone does not embrace change.
Not at all. All right, Commissioner Garrett, you want?
I have one question for the administrator. How many meetings did you have with the directors that are in this room regarding this subject?
I don't have that information directly, but I'll be more than happy to pull my calendar for you and forward that information if you need, because it's several meetings regarding multiple phone calls. And if I did not have a meeting directly, I know for certain my deputy administrator sent multiple emails as well as made multiple phone calls to include meetings. So if I did not
Emails
meet
and phone
directly,
calls aren't meetings. I'm just asking if,
but it is communication nonetheless, obtaining information, passing information back and forth. But again, if I did not meet with them directly, then I know for certain that my deputy administrator did, but I also know I did as well, but I can't quantify that for you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Administrator.
Thank you.
Warren Joseph, come on, bring up the rear and take us home, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon again. So we're a little unique in that we support various departments once we're fully funded. The first chart on the screen, just a breakdown of an org chart as it relates to the specific positions that assist with the maintenance portions of what we do. So there's a captain, a road security supervisor, which I have in here. That's Lieutenant Brooks. He has an assistant, and then we are funded for 24 detail officers. These are certified detail officers. Next slide. This is me. Yes, that's me. Okay. So since January, the next slide shows a daily average of what the detail crews have done. As been stated before, we're short. There's no denying that. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about one of the reasons why I think we're short. This is just a breakdown snapshot of what we've done. As you can see, early in the year we had more officers, so obviously we send out more cruises. As we progress throughout the year, a lot of employees left the department, and so the numbers dropped. Okay, in terms of the departments that we support, and the next slide shows engineering maintenance, 9 correctional officers that are assigned to that department once we're fully funded, in addition to the 2 civilians that was highlighted earlier. Cemeteries, I'm gonna talk about that in detail a little bit later. We projected 8 detail officers for the cemeteries. Solid waste, which is now under environmental services and engineering maintenance, I'm sorry. There are 2 officers, GDOT, 2, Central Service, Board of Education, and Utilities each have 1. And we also have the fire department with 1 civilian supervisor. Okay. So the challenges that we are having basically comes down to funding for staff. The entry-level salary for the detail officers is $40,000. We're having a lot of officers leaving because of the money, and that's the reality. They're leaving for other facilities, other agencies because of the salary. My suggestions, which I highlighted a few weeks ago, we could be creative in how we get more employees in. One is to increase the salary. We may want to look at incentive hiring, bringing in bonuses to keep them. And let me just stop and say the vast majority of the staff love working for the facility. They love the hours, the fact that it's a small facility, but it comes down to the money. They're leaving because of the money. So another solution could be part-time, as Commissioner Williams mentioned. We could focus on getting some employees that are retired, bringing them back on a part-time basis. That's an option. The other option that's been mentioned earlier, and in an ideal world, I actually prefer my officers to be certified, but if we could get individuals to take out minimum security inmates, I'll be for that as well. But my first option would be to get the certified officers in. And the main reason being, we obviously have more medium level security inmates than the minimum security inmates. The minimum level security inmates are the ones that the civilians could supervise. We will provide 20 hours of training for them, and they in turn could take these inmates out. Medium, on the other hand, which is 85% of our population, certified officers could take those out as well as the minimum. So that would be my first choice if it was left up to me. Money, again, like I said, is the big issue. And I hate to keep harping on that because I've often asked, what's the ideal number? Only thing I can tell you now, they start at 40, 43, 44 may be ideal to bring more people in for employment and keep them. So that's my recommendation. As it relates to the cutting schedule, like I said, we simply provide the officers and the inmates to the departments. It's been talked about earlier about schedule. There's no set schedule has been stated. My recommendation would be to try to pool all our resources together, and we cut by district, and we just rotate. That's just one suggestion. I think because we're short, that would help in the short term. And if it does work effectively, like I'm hoping it could, we could obviously use that as a future plan moving forward. So that's another suggestion. Then talk about the cemeteries briefly. As you are aware, we took control of the cemeteries in January. And just give you some background, Director Maurice and I talked about this and the challenges we were having, the number of inmates, detailed crews that he's been getting. And so I suggested, why don't you let us take care of the cemetery? So initially, it was to be 8 details altogether. We've been operating about 4 to 5. There's one officer in school right now, and we have another officer we just hired who's certified. She'll be on board shortly. So that's the historical backdrop. When we first started, I had a lot of good compliments. You guys are doing good, up until the rainy season. That's when the calls started coming. Coupled with broken equipment and, like I said, the short staff, we've just been playing catch up. So going into it initially, our plan was to cut each cemetery once a month. And we actually stayed on schedule. But once we hit the rain, that's when our problems occurred. And I got to also say this too, that I think a lot of the citizens think that we only cut 3 cemeteries. There are actually 7 that we were responsible for. In addition to the big 3, there's also one right outside of Westview, which is the homeless cemetery, in addition to the one off of Fitton Street. And there's also one off of Highway 25, Cemetery Road, that we take care of as well. So those are my recommendations. Again, money's our issue. The inmates are not the issue. We're fully staffed. We're fully, I'm sorry. We're fully, we're at our capacity with our inmate population. That's not an issue. It's sad to say, but that's not an issue. So moving forward, once we get more staff, I think we're better able to support these departments as we've traditionally done.
Thank you, Warden Joseph. I see Commissioner Williams that's in the queue. I have a question for you. I'm just sitting here thinking. Oftentimes we hire these cops, these specials, to kind of work. Is that a possibility? They're post-certified. Could they take crews out? Does it require training to do any of that? Just thinking out of the box.
Officers?
Yeah, sheriff's deputies, marshals.
I honestly can't speak for the sheriff, Mr. Mayor. I can't comment on that.
Okay.
Only thing I can tell you, my officers are trained to take out inmates to work.
They are trained too? Okay.
Yes,
all right.
sir.
The chair recognizes Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You said money. So you thinking that about 45,000 would be very attractive for those guys?
I'll say 44 to 45, Commissioner, and I tell you why. Our colleagues on Gordon Highway, that's the state prison. I know we're talking about apples and oranges. Coming in the door, they starting at 44. Once they up to experience 2 years, they bump them up to 48.
And we would need to. How many officer spots do you have for that?
Okay, we currently, as far as vacancies.
No, just how many people are certified or should be certified to take?
We funded for 24 officers, certified officers.
And right now they come in with you making 40.
Yes, sir.
So administrator, so you said 24 slots.
Yes, sir. We currently have 7 vacancies.
Okay, so and I'm just asking you to look at proposing maybe $5,000 per person, 24 slots, to make that attractive enough to bring folks in that probably won't stay with you because they get 46 or 47 after a while over at the other place. But to start out, 45,000 will bring in more people. What you think?
Yes, sir.
So could we look at that during budget, Madam Administrator?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. It is already under consideration, as well as the numerous other departments that have made salary increase requests as well.
Yeah.
Not only to include the sheriff's office, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, and we really need to talk about that sheriff's office. Yes, ma'am. But this is something that is directly affecting our folks in Richmond County because unlike Mr. Lewis down there, I get calls every day. I call the warden before I give him something. I apologize, man. I apologize, but I got to give you 2 or 3 more assignments. So I either call you or text you 4 or 5 times a week. So you can imagine, and each time I contact him, I'm giving him at least 2 to 3 assignments. So I'm not sure if I'm giving you 10 a week or what have you with all this rain that we've had and everything that's going on with our citizens. And Mr. Lewis is right. When they call you, they want action, and they tell lies because they say, "Oh, we'll call 311 45 times," and you call 311 and they haven't called one time, but they call you and they expect you to get on it and get it done for them. So, Mr. Ward will be, looking at things during budget time, and I'm with you and I'm behind you, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, if I could also.
Yes, sir. Come on. Yes, sir.
In terms of the vacancies, I just want to clarify, we have 7 vacant positions right now. In addition, we have 5 staff members that are preparing to go to school.
Oh, good.
And we have 2 that are currently in school as we speak right now. So that's our layout.
Is there any fear of losing them to another agency once they get their training and certification?
We've had that.
You've had that happen?
We've actually had that.
Okay, all right.
And the other piece, if I could, regarding the cemeteries, like I said, that's the biggest heartache of ours now. I've gotten calls over and over. Every day I get calls, emails, and I think one of the things I'm constantly asked is why we can't use herbicides. Now, that's one thing we're considering. We've had some discussions with risk management. There are a lot of liability issues. But I think that could help us in the long run. But before we move forward, we just got to make sure we dot all our I's, cross all our T's before we do that. And the other thing also we've noticed too with the cemeteries, like I think I highlighted, just want to say it again. Moving forward, if we still in the cemetery business, meaning my department, we cannot absolutely cut those cemeteries once a month. Has to be at least twice a month. There's no way around that, especially the rainy season. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Warden. Chair recognizes Commissioner Romney.
Warden, this question is for you, and I'm not even sure if it's feasible, but I know that a lot of outside entities offer specials to some of our already post-certified officers. During the rainy season, could we not also do that through your, make supervising a crew a special and pay them $40 an hour like they require, and that way you don't have to pay retirement, all those other extra fees.
Right. I think it boils into the training, Commissioner. There's certain key things that the individual has to be trained on before we could give them the offenders. And a lot of it is not my rule, it's Department of Correction rule.
Right.
So yes, to answer your question, yes, with the appropriate training, I'll be 110% behind that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so I don't have any other colleagues in the queue. Madam Administrator, hopefully, I think that's going to wind us up.
That's it, Mayor Johnson and Commissioners. Thank you for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. Have a great lunch. Have a great weekend. And don't forget, go see Arts in the Heart. Spend a lot of money. Madam Clerk, this special call work session is hereby closed.